Ken Block is not a usual guy. He is different. Different from the great majority of people for driving the way he does, and different from the other drivers as he has a unique way of sliding his cars. Ken Blocks comes from other roots compared to most people who are into drifting. They usually come from the Japanese scene of grassroots drifting from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. People were just starting in drifting, using basically stock cars to play around on a track and have fun sliding with their friends. Their cars were mostly rear-wheel drive, which made drifting possible, especially with low-powered cars. The technique of oversteering the car on purpose was actually useful to make the car go faster on track, although it's not usual to do that as it wears down tires a lot more, which isn't good for longer races. Ken Block does not use this technique. He uses a different technique, brought all the way from the good old rallies. Rallies occur over a variety of terrains, including tarmac, but mostly over gravel, snow, mud, and even sand. Therefore, cars have to be prepared to their limits to resist and thrive in this punishing terrain. Roll cages, body kits, sequential transmissions, suspension kits, and even all-wheel drive are essential mods seen on basically all rally cars to guarantee the survival of the driver, co-driver, and car. The all-wheel drive system is the single biggest difference between conventional drifting and Ken Block drifting. Practically all Ken Block's cars have all-wheel drive. That's what he's so good drifting, because he's devoted his entire career to this type of car. And don't get me wrong, rear-wheel drive cars do slide beautifully, but the way cars with traction on all four wheels drift is just on another level. First, they need to have a lot more power. For example, a rear-wheel drive car like the A86 can start sliding with only 130 horsepower and does it easily starting at 200. Ken Block's cars, on the other hand, not so much. For instance, his Hoonicorn, a 65 Mustang converted to all-wheel drive, is currently at a whopping 1400 horsepower. Yep, so let's drive this thing. Immediately what you'll notice is that it's very light, extremely quick, and just plows through gears. The interesting bit is that it loses traction very easily. Cruising on a straight line, as soon as you floor it, wheel spin. This also means that whenever cornering, floor it and the car starts drifting. So this is what's called a power-initiated drift. What happens is that the unstabilizing force here is the throttle. When you give it gas, the power is so great that it overcomes the tire's friction, causing them to spin uncontrollably. From here, the slide is carried out by commands from the steering wheel and the accelerator. But there are two fundamental differences between a more usual rear-wheel drive slide and a four-wheel drive one. The first is what the gas pedal does, and the second one is related to the angle of the steering wheel. To understand this, let's use the example of a rear-wheel drive vehicle. Let's suppose you're drifting stably and decide to hit the gas. What happens is that the car will get more angle, since the rear will slide further and the front tires will do nothing, acting as a pivot point. Depending on the suspension geometry, its setup, the tires you're using, and their pressure, the car can also either slide away from the turn or into it. That, however, will not happen when drifting an all-wheel drive car. The crucial point here is noticing that the front wheels also receive power, pulling the car into the direction they're pointing at. In rear-wheel drive drifting, the front tires only follow where the rear ones are going, sometimes helping change the car's angle. Yet, in Ken Block's car, the front tires also pull the car forward, which means you don't have to countersteer so much. Here's why. Mid-drift, the throttle controls how much the car is being pulled by all four tires in the direction each one of them is pointing at. Therefore, there's no pivoting in the front here. The rear tires will slide more, while the front ones will change the car's angle. In any case, the initiated drift follows an orbit dynamic. Stay with me here. As the car starts sliding, it has a velocity pointing straight ahead. but the gas pedal creates a force that pulls the car towards a center of rotation, which the car's current forward direction, and thus it starts rotating above that center point. As simple as that. Again, you're sliding, then pedal to the metal, and the car begins turning along the curve. Want a tighter radius? Turn the wheel more towards the corner. Want a wider curvature? Either gas or turn away from the corner. But beware that if you give too much throttle, the car can also slide more sideways rather than being pulled forward. With that, you're ready to start 4-wheel sliding. That is, if you subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any Tuesday and Friday video. Now that you've done that, you may ask, what if I can't initiate the drift just by pressing the accelerator because maybe I don't have 1400 horsepower? Well, then you might like this other method Ken Block uses to kickstart his drifts. It's called pulling the handbrake at 100 plus miles an hour. Yeah, if you're feeling brave enough. What this will do is it's gonna lock the rear wheels, making them feel as if they were on ice. This means they will slide, and if you move the steering wheel to one side, the rears slide to the other, putting the car at an angle ready to drift. But there's a catch. If you pull the e-brake and the clutch is not depressed, you'll kill the engine, or rather, you'll just stall it. So make sure to hit the clutch whenever pulling the handbrake. With all that info, you're ready to become Ken Block of video games, or maybe even real life, you know, if you have the means to play in real life anyway. So next time you find yourself in control of a certain 1000 horsepower all-wheel drive beast, remember to pull the handbrake together with the clutch, countersteer just a little bit, and pedal to the metal, so you always drift as a racing legend.